Okay, we'll get going. Welcome everyone to Mastering Life Shorts webinar 16. Today we're going to be looking at perspective, and what I thought I'd do today is give you a few different ways of thinking about things from different perspectives. In particular, this idea of reframing, so you're looking at things from different angles. So where did this come from? Well, it started when a friend of mine sent me this meme. It's got two guys looking at a figure on the floor, one saying 6, one saying 9. It says underneath, just because you are right does not mean I am wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side. And that's all well and good. And it's a great way of making us think about the fact that we should be thinking about people from different angles, and we should be thinking about things from different perspectives. However, this morning, I went down and took a picture in the car park outside my block of flats. And that is a 9, or is it a 6? The thing is, it's clearly one or the other. Very, very rarely do you ever get something that is actually drawn on the floor that is deliberately designed to be one thing or another. Now, the point of the meme is obviously to make you think, well, actually, maybe I'm thinking from the wrong point of view. But generally, or quite often, there is actually a right way of thinking about things. The problem that we have is that sometimes we're stuck in our own bubble of belief that we never think from the other point of view. And that's actually the point of the meme. Kant actually said, the philosopher Kant said, dare to know for yourself. And I think that's really important. Sometimes it's quite scary to find out the truth for yourself. And this is the reason why across the world, we have people who continue to vote for one side or the other in politics, even though they know that it's not right, but they don't dare to believe that they're wrong, or to accept that maybe their judgment was wrong. Giving up that thing that we said was the way it was is very, very hard. Why do people stay with the same football teams, even though they become worse and worse and worse? For some reason, it's because we don't believe the other side. Pepsi found this out a few years back. They did some market research testing and found that Pepsi was actually found to be better tasting by many people, at least when in your first couple of sips, than Coca-Cola. However, many people felt that Coca-Cola was their drink, even though they'd already said that they liked Pepsi more. Really strange how people refuse to change their judgment, refuse to look around. So going back to the meme, just because you are right does not mean I am wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side. I agree, but I'm going to add, so check your understanding and consider both sides before reaching a conclusion. This guy isn't doing any work. He doesn't go to work. What do you feel about him? Well, if you're sitting there thinking, well, he's quite clearly retired, and therefore him not going to work is great, and he's very happy with that, and I would be very happy with that, that's one thing. If we look at it from the other side, and we label, instead of labeling him a retiree, we're going to label him an unemployed person, then suddenly it has a completely different feel. So the way that we frame things, often we have to look wider than the fact in the middle. So the simple fact that he doesn't go to work isn't enough to tell us enough about this situation. Just like that 9 that was actually a 6 that I found on the car park of my outside my place, that we needed the wider information to get there. We often talk about people as glass half empty people or glass half full people. And many times we see people who are glass half empty as glum, down, depressive people, and glass half full people are great. And actually there's two different there's names for this. So a glass half empty person is a loss mindset or a loss frame, and a glass half full person is a growth frame. Now, of these two glasses, which one is half empty and which one is half full? Well, it seems a stupid question. They're both ways. Both are the same. But actually, if you look at the wider context, instead of looking at wider context in one moment, we look at the wider context over time, then this glass was being filled up. So it was empty, then half full, and then full. Whereas this glass was being emptied. So it was full, and then half empty, and then empty. Or half full. But you can see where I'm coming from on this, that actually sometimes we need to widen our perspective to a frame of a bigger time in order to really understand where something is. Now, framing, this thing I keep talking about, is really interesting. And the human brain does weird things with frames. So a study was done where participants were split into two groups and were given a description of a drug. And the first participant group were told that the medicine had a 70% success rate. The second group were told that the medicine had a 30% failure rate. Now, clearly, they are both the same thing. If it's 70% successful, it's failed 30% of the time. What's interesting is the way that the group saw that medicine. Generally, the people in the first group saw the medicine as a good medicine. If you say it's going to, cure 70% of the people who have cancer, that's great. The people in the second group, bad. It was seen as a bad medicine that, you wouldn't take. Why would you take something that's going to fail 30% of the time? What's even more interesting than that in the framing directly is what happened next. So the first group were then told this medicine has a 30% failure rate. They clearly didn't like the medicine after that. So even though they were told they were told this in this order: 70% success, 30% failure, and then overall, because their attention had been drawn to the failure, they thought it wasn't a very good medicine. The second group, on the other hand, were told afterwards, after being told it had a 30% failure, that it was 70% successful. Really interestingly, that group thought that it was a bad medicine. So the framing seems to stick more when something is framed in the negative. So if you're trying to sell a product, make sure you always tell the good thing first and the bad thing second. Or potentially, if you're talking about your competitor, tell the bad thing about your competitor first, in order to frame it in the right direction. There's something about our minds that it has a tendency to sort of stick to the negative or even move to the negative if we're not careful. Another way of framing is looking at the different angles that you can look at something. Now, Royal Mail a few years back had what they saw as an issue. They had first-class stamps, which are supposed to get mail there the next day. Only 90%, 98% of the first-class stamps were getting mailed there the next day. And Royal Mail felt that this was really important. And what they needed to do was they needed to increase this to 99%. And they spent huge amounts of money on increasing the percentage of letters that were getting there on time, and it almost bankrupted the Royal Mail. However, the public perception was that only 50 to 60% of first-class mail was delivered the next day. So even though they were tinkering around with 2% or 1% increase on something very high, the public had no idea how good it was. So one would question whether it was actually worth spending all that money in increasing that 98 to 99 when the public didn't even realize it was that good in the first place. So maybe they should have spent some money on something completely different, such as a marketing campaign, in order to improve the public's perception of how good first class mail was. I've heard another story about the fact that Eurostar cost several £billions to produce, and it decreased the time it took to get from London to Paris by about 20 minutes. If you think about it, how much does 20 minutes actually matter to anyone? Maybe putting some Wi-Fi on the trains in the early days. This is way back when, before Wi-Fi was available widely. Maybe that just installing Wi-Fi would have been able to be done from a much cheaper, and actually had the same effect on customer satisfaction. So sometimes we need to change our perspective on what actually would increase the profitability, the efficiency, the perception of our products, or anything within that. Now, one of the things I do a lot in my coaching is I use what's known as if shifts with clients. As if shifts are trying to change my client's perspective. So, for example, if you have two people arguing, I'll often say to my clients, so what does the other person think? What are they trying to get out? What are they worried about? And by simply making helping my client think from the other person's perspective, suddenly things become a bit different, and they become more able to solve problems because they realize what that other person that they had an issue with was trying to get to in the first place. Another as if shift I use all the time are time shifts. Instead of saying, what we're doing today, I'll say, okay, what will happen in 5 years' time, or in 10 years' time, or at the end of your working life? Or even just what would happen the day after you complete this project? Why is that going to be a great thing? What will that feel like? And by moving people into the future, it's really, really powerful way of changing their perspective and seeing what matters and what doesn't matter. Another as if shift I use is a systems as if shift. So quite often we get bound up in what our teams and the people inside our organizations are thinking. So it may be, for example, if there's a particular system within an organization that needs changing, then I would say to my clients, okay, so how would that change be perceived from the outside? Will anyone care? Will it make a difference to the bottom line, to anyone who uses your outcomes? Another as if shift I use is what's known as the red button, or the button shift, and basically, or magic button. Basically, it's if I was to press this button and your challenge went away, what would happen next? One of the interesting things about that is people are often so busy thinking about the challenges that they have that they don't actually consider what happens next. They're so busy trying to get around it that they don't see that there was a very easy way of moving forwards without getting too stuck in the challenge itself. So if you're getting stuck in your, you're in life or your work, and you could do with getting some change of perspective, some absolutely get in touch with me at EnglishLeatherMaster.com, and I'll set up a free 1 hour experience coaching session, and maybe you'll experience some of these as if shifts, which will really help you. Because what's nice about working with a coach is you see the blind spots that you don't necessarily have. The other way you can find your own blind spots is, as always, I've got a worksheet on my website, EnglishLeatherMaster.com/mastering-life-shorts. Today's password is reframe with a capital R. And the idea of this worksheet is for you to work through looking at the different things where you might actually have got stuck in one perspective without really thinking or noticing that you are, and then helping you find ways of reframing. It's quite difficult to do this on your own, though, I would say. So sometimes it's very useful to work with a coach or with a friend or someone else who might be able to say, oh, you've got a blind spot there. You're stuck. You believe that's the case. Have you thought of it from another point of view? Next week, we're going to be looking at vision, how you can have a vision for your work or your life that moves you forwards. So I'm really looking forward to talking to you about that. Thank you very much and see you then.